Hello everyone, welcome to today's Deck Tech Talk for Opus 16. And today we are featuring one of my favorite characters from Final Fantasy and a card that was just so interesting to me, I just had to build a deck around it, and that is our Water Legend Tidus. For those of you who don't know this card, what he does is he says outright he just cannot be blocked. When Tidus is put from the field into its owner's deck, draw 3 cards. And then finally, when Tidus is chosen by your opponent's summons or abilities, you may put Tidus at the bottom of its owner's deck. When you do so, choose a forward opponent controls, put it at the bottom of its owner's deck. So, if someone is foolish enough to choose this card while it's on the field, and they have a forward on the field, you can have him dodge, duck under his deck, you get to send one of theirs off the field under their deck, and you draw 3 cards off of it. Feels amazing. And then beyond that, he just simply can't be blocked, so he's a card he's just going to slowly put in work, right? So it's kind of funny, when I first saw this card, I had an idea of, what if you did some kind of control style deck with this Tidus, where he's your main beater, because they can't block him, so he doesn't really care about what they put out, and that if they are to choose him, then they're going to, lose a lot of advantage, because they'll lose their forwards, and then you'll get to draw so many cards. So I had an idea of, okay, well, he is not going to succeed if he's just by himself, and they've got 5 forwards. They'll happily let him come in, and then they'll just crack back and destroy you. So we need to be able to control their board to make sure that our board is always ahead. Now, funny enough, this Water Bounceless came out with using Folka and Mashuri to just keep bouncing your opponent's forwards with, like, Leviathan summons. It became a big thing in Japan. We've really adopted it over here. So, that might be better than this list, but that wasn't my original concept, so I'm going to go with my original concept. What I settled on was, hey, what if we just blow up every forward that comes onto your opponent's field? Henceforth, we have the Odin package. And I'm just going to put out every Odin I have right here. Why not? We'll put the suns up top. Give them the limelight they deserve. All of these Odins are very straightforward because they all just break a forward. They have different costs depending on their situation, and 9 of them are EX bursts. I almost wish a couple more were EX bursts, but so be it, that's what we have. So this Odin, since Opus 1, will just outright break anything, and it's a burst, that's nice. This Odin is 6, however, his cost is reduced for every other Odin in your break zone, so it is very easy to get this guy to cost 1, 2, no problem. This one, at least in my testing, has been slightly weird because he can choose a forward to cost 2 or less, break it, and then he draws you a card back, which is really good, and it should be very powerful in this meta because 2 costs are stronger than they've ever been. Unfortunately, if you run up against something like Soirees, which has no 2 costs, that one's going to be a bit dead for you, but nonetheless, he's really good against things. Sophie, Palamporum, Laswell, Broska, any of the 2 costs you're afraid of. This one can always break a 2 cost, and then if you take a point of damage, it can upgrade to break a 4 cost. Sometimes that's really useful, other times I feel it's kind of eh. And then this one will break any 5 cost or less, and at damage 5, it only costs you 2 from now on, which is very cool, and it's a burst. So yeah, so the idea was, we'll have Tidus as our beater. He's going to he's going to go in, start chipping away at your opponent, and then we'll have our Odins. That way we can help keep their board clear, especially as power levels have gotten stronger. Straight break, I think, is probably at the strongest it's been in a long time. You will cry if you happen to run into a Celestia or an Opus 11 Tifa, something that just says, hey, you can't break stuff on my board. You're going to have a bad time. But beyond that, I think you'll like this. So, some of the backups. We've got 2 copies of Seymour. This deck is very burst heavy. I think there's 20 bursts total in the deck, somewhere around there. Not only does Seymour add to that burst count, I really like this backup early if they're going aggressive. If turn 1, they put out, here's Palom, here's Porum, or here's Avalanche, here's whatever it is, here's this aggressive start. So you turn 1, you drop the Seymour backup. Not only are you developing a backup, you could go fetch any summon put on top of your deck. So you go fetch this Odin and you go, whoop. And so go ahead, please attack into me. I'm going to guarantee kill one of your guys. It's quite nice. If they are not going aggressive, and you're just putting this down turn 1, and you're going to draw that summon, I would highly recommend the 2 cost or the 6 cost Odin. In general, you never want to pull EX bursts out of your deck because, again, then you have a chance to potentially hit those into damage later, which could save you. So always grab one of these 2. Probably this guy if it's really early. Maybe him it's a bit later. So then I thought, well, what's more dangerous than a Tidus sitting a turn and beating you down turn by turn, right? What about a Tidus that just hits you that first turn? So we have several ways to give haste in this deck. 2 copies of Red Mage, really good backup that again can not only haste Tidus, can just haste anything in the deck on demand. It's even, I know it's Opus 16 now, but it's a card your opponent does have to respect, especially if the game is close, because they have to know you can always threaten to pop out of nowhere with this card. And I've used it in some stalemates before where your opponent's on damage 6, and let's say they have a Celestia or they have something I can't break through. Whoops, drew Tidus with the Red Mage, he immediately goes in. They have to be able to instantly answer him, otherwise they just lose. 2 copies of Sid Previa. He's the same thing. When he enters the field, he gives another forward haste on a body. Other than that, he's a good chump blocker because he doesn't have a lot of power, but just another way to give Tidus haste. 3 copies of Alua. She has built-in haste herself, but Shoal is one of the best specials in the game, where she'll get the entire board haste, activate the whole board, make your opponents lose 2,000 power. Card's great. So there are our haste options. A couple more of our burst and go into our summons. 3 copies of Porum. I like this card because it's cheap. It's a good way to help chump block, and then you're threatening, I'm just going to get back an Odin. Again, especially if you've got this one to a really cheap cost. You can just keep recurring it and then breaking your opponent's forwards very easily. For a little backup consistency, this is the Opus 10 Sarah, but it's a proxy for the Opus, I think it's 14, right? Or is it Opus 13? No, the Opus 13 Sarah, the 4 cost that searches you out a princess, a king, or a prince. Yeah, but mine are in another deck at the moment, but yeah, so this is what it is. It'll be correct in the deck list. But so she'll search out either Princess Sarah, her most valuable target, or King of Concordia. He's a king target. If you somehow drew all 3 of these in your opening hand, congratulations, and then just search out other copies of Sarah. But as far as what color you make Princess Sarah, it really doesn't matter in this deck. I will always go for whatever element I have the least of currently on the field and what I know I have access to in my hand. There's no key forwards in here that you want to be able to buff by a certain power. So again, if they're choosing Tidus, his effect's going off anyway. So yeah, I would always just do whichever element you need the most of. A bit more defensive cards. 3 copies of Lightning. This is very good when things are going wrong, or you're just not set up yet. Again, they've got aggression, aggro. Maybe you're not hitting your Odins in the burst. That happens to me plenty of times. Lightning's a good way to just deal with a problematic forward. You can even stack her entry effect with her own special bouncer, so she resolves, comes back in, hits again. Another card that is very general and I really like is Lakshmi. Sometimes if I have a bad opening, again, if you know anything about me, I'm the type of player, I want to see my backups early, I want to take the time to get set up. Sometimes the game just doesn't give you that. Lakshmi's a really good alternative to see turn 1 that, alright, I'll just put this card down turn 1 and it's going to immediately start drawing me cards back. And it's kind of a funny card because it's not really a threat. It's not threatening to remove their forwards, and yet your opponent still wants to deal with it because the longer it sits there, the more advantage it's getting you. So, rounding out our burst cards, we have Kyrie. When she enters the field, your opponent will reveal their hand. Then you look at the top 2 cards of your deck. You can return these to the top or bottom or any order. Great way to just scout what they're doing. But in particular, it's kind of works just like Seymour a little bit. Not that you get to search one out, but if you can see, oh, I've got an Odin coming up. Let me slap this back on top so that way when they hit it, it's going to guarantee kill one of their things. 1 copy of Diana. She searches out a 1-cost forward on entry. Now, there's only 1 target for this, and it's Sid Previa, so you could absolutely change this out if you don't like this ratio, if you don't like there's only a single Diana for only 2 copies of Sid. You could throw it out. I like it just because it's on a burst, and at least so far, fingers crossed, I haven't run into that problem where I draw the Sids first, or by the time I draw the Diana, I have 5 backups anyway, so I don't even care. But absolutely feel free to adjust that if you need to. 2 copies of Thoradin. Fits our EX burst count. On a burst or entry, you get to look for any card in your deck, so you can immediately go grab your Tidus, or if they're aggroing you need to get Lightning, whatever card best fits the situation. And finally, 1 copy of Larsa. This one, I kind of go back and forth on. This is absolutely a spot you could tech out. So when he enters the field, you get to choose a card in your damage zone and add it to your hand, and then you put 1 card from your hand into the damage zone. If you're having a rough game and you're low on cards, he doesn't really feel very good because you're probably not going to be able to cast him whatever you pull out. However, I have really liked him when there is a card, like I really want being able to pull, oh, they hit one of my Aluas into damage, kind of being able to pull a Shoal out to then use, I found to be very potent. Or sometimes they'll hit a bunch of these Odins in there, and it's like, oh, I need a break on demand right now. Let me grab one of those Odins, use it. I really need that haste. Whatever it is, and there's enough burst in here that there's a good chance you'll get his second effect, which is a field effect, which just says every forward you control is +2 as long as you have 3 cards with EX burst in your damage zone. Unfortunately, that effect is just kind of underwhelming, especially in the face of the new Legend Aerith that just does that by existing. It's kind of dumb. Larsa has to get 3 in there to get +2. And now I get the idea that, in theory, if you get to 6, everything just has +4, but I've never had that happen, so congratulations if you get there. Rounding out, we've got 2 copies of Class 6 Moogle. Some people don't care about these. It's just my playstyle, I'll be honest, it really is. I like seeing, I enjoy in decks like these when I can see this backup turn 1, cool, I'm immediately color fixed. Now I can get either of my colors. I really like that. If you can somehow find another backup that maybe will fit better in here, absolutely feel free to throw it in, but for the colors of Water Lightning, I think he's quite good. 1 copy of Mashari. She will reduce the cost of all of our summons by 1, which is quite nice, can make this Odin even cheaper. It already can't become 0, so it doesn't conflict with that. Casting this Odin for 1 can be very nice. Maybe this one for 4, maybe this one even for 1 if you're on damage 5s. And then you've got so many summons to deal with, she's going to have a lot of fodder for her action ability. That you can remove 3 summons, bounce any forward, draw a card, make the next summon 3 cheaper, which, probably you won't need, but maybe you could use it for this one or the big guy if you absolutely needed to. But she's just a generically very strong, powerful card. 1 copy of Behemoth King. Our man's just a beater, and we have several ways to give him haste. Behemoth King with haste is quite scary. The Red Mage, the Alua. Be warned, if you use Sid Previa to give him haste, you will break your Sid Previa. Normally, that's not going to make or break the game for you. If you're giving the Behemoth King haste to go run in there, I can't really see a situation where you still keeping this body matters, but in case it does, just be aware you will break the Sid Previa when he targets the Behemoth King, but it still gives it haste, and that's what matters. Last but certainly not least, our dual element, Lightning and Water, Thancred. He's just a 1-of. This card is very susceptible to Amaterasu. It's a lot of CP to pay just to have it get canceled, but there is a really nice mix of Water and Lightning in here, so it's very possible to get his numbers up to 5, which is the biggest card you can get, which is Behemoth King. So you can basically grab back anyone you want from your break zone, and then he can also be very scary with haste, because when he attacks, he's going to break an active forward based on the number of lightning characters you control, so he's another really good haste target. So here's the deck. It is both very simple and has more lines than you would think, thanks to things like Mashari, thanks to some of the little random action effects we have back here, the Odins. But the core idea is, again, get Tidus out there, have him start going in, and then you just help keep the board clear with the Odins. And, I would still at least go somewhat mid-range. Again, if you have a bad opening and you've got 1 backup, maybe then you put the Tidus out. However, this isn't as efficient as the Water version. The Water version, you can get away with that a little more because you're getting other value and draw through those other cards. There's not as much in here to draw. So personally, I would probably still wait till maybe 3 to start trying to do that. But depending on how your hand looks, again, he's also a card that says the earlier he starts going in, and unless they happen to be playing Famford or Tomos or something that answers them easily, it's always going to punish them when they try to answer this card. As far as tech cards go, I have to mention the Opus X Lightning Legend. It's a 6 cost. When she comes to the field, you can search out 2 copies of Odin, and then later you can dull her, pay a Lightning, and remove 2 Odins from the break zone to outright break anything. I'll be honest, I've never really liked that card. I can see the appeal, and if you want to try it, go nuts. But again, especially in a day with Amaterasu, feels bad enough to have Thancred canceled by that. I would hate to pay 6 for that Lightning just to have them cancel it. And then I'd rather have the Odins get removed from Mashri's effect than to have to use that Lightning's effect. So I don't personally like it, but absolutely you can throw it in here if that's something you're interested in instead. Finally, you could also do something like the Merrill Web backup, the 4-cost one that just searches a water forward, that way you guarantee get your Tidus. However, I find Thoradin pretty much fulfills that anyway, because he can get you any card, and he gives you the burst potential, which is quite nice. And then if he somehow goes to the break zone, he can draw you a card that way as well. So, personally, I just like him a little bit better. But, there's the deck. Let me know what you think. Deck list will be in the description below. One other thing to mention is you could do the new starter Orin. He will get his card draw if Tidus is on the field when he dies. And then he's a magnet that, if they, sometimes they get to that point where, okay, I have to choose this Tidus because otherwise it's going to kill me. And Orin says, no, you got to pick me first. So he can be really nice. The 5-cost Lena can be nice to recur Porum, recur Larsa. So you've got some angles. You could definitely take this, but this is my version. Hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think. And until next time, take care. Bye.